For richer, for poorer, there's no surer way to happiness.
Christian, Jew,
Sikh, Hindu, each stuck together with a different glue. Hand in hand, root and land, off in the motor to the promised land.
true and trusting,
Loving, lusting, no escape into reverse. For better, for worse.
I think I'd abolish honeymoons, really, because I think that more troubles get constellated in a honeymoon than almost any time of life. So I'm not actually in favour of honeymoons, I think. I think what happens in a honeymoon is that you get in a quite false, idealised situation where the things that are marvellous perhaps are temporarily more marvellous, but so many things go wrong that make people think, what on earth have I got into, and how am I ever going to get out of it again? Whereas if you do it differently, you can then decide to have a honeymoon when you're ready for it. So that, no, I think it's better to do your honeymoon when you're ready for it and not when everybody expects you to go away and find yourself marvellously married all at once.
Abolish honeymoons, whatever next? I must admit I hadn't realised until I watched that film of Mary that our traditional idea of the honeymoon hasn't been going all that long. Apparently, the honeymoon originally meant the first month. Moon, you see, directly after the marriage. It didn't at first mean the intimate journey we think of now. But do a lot of young couples find those early days quite different from what they expected? Not a dream of bliss, but a coming to terms with reality? Anyway, for many of them, it certainly isn't the occasion for their first sexual experiences anymore. Well, this programme isn't just about honeymoons. We're going to take a look at the first couple of years of marriage, a period that one of our guests, Dr. Jack Dominion, who's a consultant psychiatrist and director of the Marital Research Centre at the Central Middlesex Hospital, is particularly interested in. And here's Claire Rayner, and this is where I take a deep breath. Journalist, broadcaster, married for over 20 years, mother of 3, and not exactly unknown to readers of the Sun newspaper's problem page. Claire, now, is a honeymoon not a very good way to start off a marriage partnership?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. It's got a lot going for it. It marks the difference between being single and being married. I tell you what it's a bit like. It's a bit like when you're learning to drive and you go around with L plates. As long as you see it as a time when you're going to make mistakes and it's not going to be easy and people are going to say, look at them, aren't they silly? And you're going to feel silly yourself. Yes. Then a honeymoon's got a lot going for it. It really makes a passage from one to the other.
Mm-hmm. What's your view, Jack?
I think honeymoons have got both a private and a public meaning. I think privately you are really experiencing yourself with your partner for the first time, exclusively together. And publicly, you're telling the world that from now on, this is how you want to be seen. So I think it's really both a private experience of togetherness and a public sign to the world that we are now married.
Mm. Now, your research unit has been researching into the origins of marital breakdown. What have they discovered?
Well, we've been doing a lot of work, but our first study was a study between those who have remained married and those who have divorced. And we've looked at some of the social factors that have distinguished them.
Now, Claire, is sexual adjustment a problem in the early years of marriage?
Well, I get a lot of letters about it, but that doesn't mean to say that everyone has the problem. I mean, people who are having a marvellous time aren't going to waste that time writing me letters, are they? But I do get quite a lot of letters from people who are finding it difficult, largely, I suspect, because they think it's going to be all magic. You know, waves rushing up the beach and cobwebs trembling. And surprise, surprise, it isn't like that. It takes time. Anything worth enjoying takes time to learn about. And people expect too much at the beginning, I fear.
Mm. Mm. Well, another of our traditions here in Western society is that the couple are in love. We assume that being in love is the reason why they've chosen to marry each other. And what do we usually mean by this expression of being in love? Something quite different from loving? Does one change to the other? Couples have been known to marry for reasons of convenience and then later discover that they were in love. But is this really a good basis for a life partnership?
Well, when you're in love, it's the same thing as loving a person. Anyway, you just live for that person and you don't mind to what extent you go to make him happy, or do things for him.
Being happy in that person's company, and having that someone as somebody who they can share things with, happiness, misery, whatever.
I think loving someone is more physical, touching and feeling. But to love someone, I think, is to want to protect them and help them.
Love is the most wonderful thing on earth. To love one another is to be tolerant of one another. And love overcomes all, if there's true love.
Respect. Not interfering with each other's lives, as long as it didn't interfere with the economics of living together, so that each has got a certain amount of freedom.
You can love a person without going to bed with them. Of course, that's an added extra, isn't it?
Claire, how would you define in love and loving?
My dear, the poets and the philosophers have been trying to answer that for centuries. I'll have a go. I mean, I think being in love is being intensely self-centered. I mean, there's the love object, yes, but you're deeply concerned with your feelings, this 10 inches off the ground, little pink cloud feeling. I think it's seeing through rose-coloured glasses. Everything about the person you love is absolutely perfect, and it's very easy to shatter it. His nose runs in the cold, or his ears go red, and you think, maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. It's intensely romantic, and it isn't real, but love is something else. Love goes on, and it's got bits of in love left over in it. That's as far as I can manage. It's one of those impossible questions, I think, don't you?
Have you got a definition?
Well, I think being in love is a very exaggerated, idealized experience. The way you perceive the one you love is as someone wonderful. The way you desire them is all the time, now, instantly, together. And the way you relate, you exaggerate their good points, you minimize their faults. They're really greater than life.
So how does a loving relationship evolve?
I think a loving relationship gradually makes you see the person as they are and not as you want them to be. You desire them, but without either drowning them or without being too far away, a balanced togetherness. And you relate to them realizing that they do have faults and that their talents are not as great as they used to be. And above all, loving means that you stay with them caring as they change.
Yeah, that's an important point. May I say this? I'm worried by the people who think that when the heart-stopping, breathless excitement of being in love starts to change, something's gone wrong. All the magic's gone out of our relationship. And they shoot off to find someone else to fall in love with. The sort of serial monogamy people. They're missing more than they know. They think that in-loveness lasts forever. It's temporary. I adored it while I enjoyed it. But there's a lot to be said for not being quite so exhausted by it all.
So, Jack, is this where the origins of discontent lie?
Oh, indeed. That's the origins of discontent, that the person is no longer the way you saw them when you were in love with them, that you begin to see him or her as they are, and you don't like what you see and you don't like what you experience.
So, what precautions can we take against this sort of thing?
I think a little basic common sense has a lot going for it. Being aware that even while you're looking through those rose-coloured glasses, that you're going to have to take them off eventually. Enjoying the feelings of romance while you've got them, but settling for what follows. And building on that. It's practicality every time. It's very juvenile, isn't it, to think you're going to be romantically in love and in total harmony forever. And I think people have to grow up, and you can't force them to do it. They have to do it at their own rate.
Well, if they can't resolve these problems themselves, where should they go for help?
Well, I do feel very strongly that what they don't do is talk to their friends and their relations and their neighbours, because that way that way lies problems, because if things work out afterwards, if the marriage can sort itself out, the last people you want to talk to are the friends and neighbours who knew all about the miseries while it was going on. And if it doesn't work out, you don't want to see them afterwards because it reminds you of the bad times. Now, I think you should seek help, first from your partner, obviously, talk to each other. But then if you do need more help than that, go to the unemotionally involved but interested outsider. And I send people to the Marriage Guidance Council, not as a last resort, by the way. They're not there just to pick up the pieces when the whole thing's disintegrating. They're there at any time when a marriage feels a strain. They're a marvellous sounding board, someone who will listen. They don't solve problems, but they help you solve your own.
Would you agree with that?
Yes. One point is when you're talking to your friends and your relatives, be careful when they agree too much with what you want to hear.
Yes. Absolutely. That's the danger signal.
That's the danger signal.
Well, probably we'd all agree that in these early days, harmony in the bed is as important as anything. But there is a very common cause, another very common cause of discord which often comes up about this time, and that is money. We filmed some young engaged couples talking about family budgeting, and you'll notice that the girls have very decided views on how they see their own roles.
We both put so much away, and then the rest goes in his account, the rest goes in my account, and those are two separate. And until he can afford to, keep me and keep a family without depending on my money, then I'll keep giving him. But when he can afford to keep a family and keep me and look after the house without depending on my money will go into a separate account, which I will use for what I want to buy. Perhaps I'll buy my children special things from me without having to ask Ian, and I can buy Ian a present without asking him for money to buy him a present. And I'll have my own little separate thing that if anything should ever happen, I've got it. And when he doesn't have to rely on it.
Just because one's a wife, one doesn't have to be an unpaid housekeeper. And perhaps if one is just washing and ironing and keeping a house clean and tidy, one could be paid for it without feeling that one's taking something for nothing. So this money that you're saying is put into a bank account is not really just given. You're working for it. If you weren't there, your husband would have to hire someone else to do the job.
I would find it extremely difficult when, after having given up work, which I will do obviously when I have children, to take money in the hand from Len for clothes or for things that I've always managed to be able to buy myself very well. And I think that the only sort of solution you could have for that is to have, say, for instance, a joint account for things in the family and also separate accounts to keep the independence.
It's probably the best solution. I mean, I've never had to share any money with anybody, so to speak, or, given my bank account open. I suppose the idea of independence, or losing my independence as well, totally would also not be a very good idea. I think it would be good for her to have her own money and to buy what she wants to buy and feel free to do what she wants to do at any time she wants to do.
I don't know how Len would feel about it, but I think it would be far more subtle of Len and a far better way of doing it. If we agreed an allowance I knew I could manage with, fine, and he could afford to give me, but not in my hand, just to literally place it into my account, and you were there but it wasn't discussed, I would feel better that way.
From our wages, we've put up both our wages together, we'll say, right, take £10 out for so-and-so, £15 for so-and-so, £10 for so-and-so, until all the bills are being put aside, the money for the bills being put aside. Whatever we've got left over, we decide what we'll need to go through the week between the pair of us, bus fares, getting snacks at work, cigarettes.
Moses has just given me money right from the start. Because he's not very good at managing money. If he had it, he'd just go out and spend it.
The last couple who are married seem to have reached a fair understanding about disposing their joint incomes. But not everyone is so lucky, or should I say wise. Claire, what about this problem of money and budgeting?
Oh, budgeting's all very well. It helps to start with enough. Seriously, poverty is the rock on which a great many potentially successful marriages do break. And there's an enormous amount to be said for making sure that you can get by. To go into it all airy-fairy and say, love will conquer all. Ain't clever. The next important stage, I think, is to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. In my own relationship, I've been married for 20 years to the same man, and he looks after the money because I'm stupid about it. Not because he's the man and I'm the woman, but because, I'm extravagant. And I think this is one of the things that a couple need to discover. But basically, I think joint, sharing everything, but with a certain amount for each partner, not just the girl, but the fella as well, is very important.
Does that square with your researches, Joe?
That's true. Money is very important, that it should be agreed the way it's shared. But I don't think we should forget that over and above financial difficulties, money is a symbol, which means you love me. It's a symbol of power, so that people can use money as a way of telling each other, I don't get the attention that I want from you. Or they can use money as a way of controlling one another, using power over one another. It's the most readily available means of expressing emotions and feelings without the people realizing that this is what they want to do. So when a couple realize that there is enough money and they can share it fairly well, but they're still arguing, they're arguing about something else.
Yes. Well, are there any ground rules for harmonious budgeting, apart from having a lot?
Honesty helps. I'm always saddened when I hear of men who don't tell their wives what they earn. That still happens, even with young people. It's a secret. I'm saddened when I hear of wives who scrounge their money and who tuck things away and who feel they have to cheat on the budgeting, because it's a threat, I think, to the very root of the relationship. So I think the major ground rule is to be absolutely honest and to admit your own faults as far as money is concerned. If you're bad at it, say I'm bad at it, and allow yourself to be set on one side by the partner who's better at handling it.
Do you agree with that, Jack?
Yes, I do. I think people should share responsibility for money and feel that they're doing justice to one another.
So how important is it for a woman to have her own money?
Oh, I think it's very important, because women often find themselves in a position of dependence, and it really does irritate them if they feel that they have to be beggars, if they feel that they really are all the time asking, when they feel their spouse, as their husband, should be able to be generous and understand their needs.
Mm. Yes, it's one couple, I must confess, saddened me just a little listening to that talk. The girl who talked about wanting money to spend on my children. It seemed to me that she needs to do a little more thinking yet about her attitude, not only to money, but to this separatism. They'll be their children, and anything that's spent on them, I would have thought, should be seen as belonging to both parents rather than just her. But still, this is something that perhaps will change in time.
Mm. Something else we perhaps ought to be considering here is the sort of pattern each of us inherits from the family that we grew up in. For example, it can be quite difficult to accept your partner's attitude to money or sex or, well, indeed, almost anything. Jack, do couples find it difficult at first to cope with the built-in ideas of the other partner?
Well, part of this difficulty is dealt with in the process of courtship, because we tend to go with people with whom we have shared common backgrounds. But you're quite right. I think part of loving is to get to know how your husband or your wife acts, thinks, feels, and gradually to adapt. But the key to this adaptation is really a shared responsibility for each other, and not to come to a full stop and say, this is how things are and you're wrong, which is really the beginning of troubles.
Yes. And Claire, I know you feel very strongly about young people having homes of their own wherever possible when they start off.
Oh, indeed, yes, because, you know, if I could pass one law, it would be that every couple would have a home of their own, and the state would see to it that it was provided, and they would have it long enough to establish some roots so that they could feel secure within themselves. Because getting married is a difficult, let's face it, a difficult experience anyway, and at the same time, you have to break away from being somebody's son, somebody's daughter, to being somebody else's wife or husband. And I think it's easier to make this whole transition in one package, rather than to say, move in with the in-laws, somebody, one set of parents, where you continue to be uneasy. For part of the day, you're still the little girl, little boy who grew up in that house, and another part of the day, you're someone else's spouse. You see, and I think that makes it very difficult for them. So yes, you know, that underlines the differences that may exist between two people who, whatever sort of background they come from. If they're sharing the home of one of them, the original home of one of them, it can be very, very fraught, very damaging.
And what about in-laws? I mean, what about the traditional mother-in-law? Is she really this dragon that we led to believe?
Well, people with nice mothers-in-law, once again, don't write me letters, so it's hard for me to say. I know about the dragons. They don't mean to be dragons, actually. Very often, the ones I hear about are frightened women who don't want to let go of the only thing they've really cared about in their lives, very often, is a child. And they want to keep the child a child and can't accept the transition to adult status. But a lot of mothers-in-law I know from personal experience are supportive and sensible and are there to be leaned on. But it's a very difficult relationship on both sides. I mean, not only have you got your own parents to relate to, but you've got a new set of your husband's or wife's parents to relate to. And they, in their turn, have got to relate to you and in a curious way to each other, haven't they? The two sets of in-laws are also linked, and it's not easy for anybody.
What sort of problems have you discovered, then, from living with in-laws?
Oh, I think the important person is the mother, particularly the relationship between girls and their mothers, because they tend to stay closer than boys and their fathers. And I think, as Claire says, there are two problems here. On one side of the newly married, and the key here is to avoid bypassing your spouse and going to your mother to sort out an important problem, because then you remain a daughter instead of being a wife. And as far as the parents are concerned, I think the rules for them are they should be available, they shouldn't intrude, and they shouldn't advise. The key working out should be with the partners. They should make themselves available, they should give their opinions, but they shouldn't advise. So that the key working out is between the spouses.
I'm going to disagree with you, Jack, on the question of giving their opinions. I think the clever parent-in-law is the one who listens and says nothing. I really would think that opinions can be, in their own way, as damaging as advice, because opinion can be disguised advice, can't it?
But we're always pushing our parents to tell us what is best. And the important point is to listen, but to work it out with your partner.
Exactly, yes. I feel very strongly that too many young couples are almost scared to talk to each other. There's still this image of perfection that they want to retain, the in-love perfection. And admitting that you can't cope with this or this is worrying you can sometimes be embarrassing. Now, that may sound an odd word to use for people who are sharing marriage, but they do get embarrassed and shy. And it's something that has to be worked at. You have to overcome it and teach yourself to say to the person you love, that you love enough to have married, I can't cope with this in myself, I can't cope with this in you, help me. And there's another sort of embarrassment I think is important. I know you feel strongly about this, Jack, and that is being embarrassed to say, I think you're clever, I think you're lovely. Not just goo-goo noises when you're making love, but to say outside bed, when you're not just necessarily cuddling.
Yes, I think
you're smashing.
This leads really to the two golden rules about relating. One is I'm quite sure to share responsibility and not to put the blame on the other person. And secondly, to really be appreciative of all the good things. We tend only to relate strongly when we find fault with another person, and we don't tend to appreciate them. I think sharing responsibility for what's happening and appreciating all the time these are the two very important things.
Yes.
And talking, that's the other one.
Yes.
Well, you can't do these things without talking.
Well, a lot of people, in fact, really think they can. They think that talking too much, that you can express too many feelings. I go on and on about this to people. Say it, put it in words, write it down if the words won't come out any other way.
Claire, can you give us your golden rules for living with in-laws, just to go back to that point, because Jack gave us his?
Well, think twice. Think twice before you go to your in-laws or your own parents, and think, is this something that she and I can sort out on our own? That's the important one, I think.
Yes. Well, Claire Rayner, Jack Dominion, thank you very much for joining us. And our thanks also to everyone who appeared in the film sequences. Now, a reminder about our leaflet that has names and addresses of advisory services and clinics which might prove useful if you have a marital problem. We'll be glad to send you one if you send a stamped addressed envelope to this address. For better, for worse, ATV Centre, Birmingham B1 2JP. For better, for worse, ATV Centre, Birmingham B1 2JP. But please, we can't enter into any correspondence with you about your own personal marital problems. Our next programme is going to take us a step further on in marriage. Claire Shepherd of Woman's Realm Dr. David Delvin of She and Betsy Bell, a health visitor, will be joining me and looking at what happens to the relationship when the babies start coming along, and the problems, as well as the rewards that they bring with them. I hope you'll be able to join us. Bye-bye.
For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, I'll adore her till the day she dies.
No more fears, no more tears,
No infidelity or rent arrears. Hold hands tight.
outlook's bright. Why look further than the wedding night?
Love and cherish till we perish. From the altar to the hearse, so we hope. For better, for worse.
Next on Thames in concert, it's Alex Rock.